But I did just want to introduce myself first. My name is Melanie, Melanie Murphy Richter. I am a longevity dietitian and also the director of communications here at El Nutra. And this is our El Nutra Longevity Lab series where science meets strategy for a longer and healthier life. We began this particular podcast and webinar podcast to basically explore the latest in research, provide expert insights and practical tools to help you harness the power of fasting, the power of longevity nutrition, and also longevity science. So whether you're new to the wellness world, if you're looking to expand your expertise wherever you find yourself, we hope that you find this empowering and able. We want to supply you with the knowledge that supports a vibrant, lasting health. So, yay! Also, before I introduce our incredible guest today, Cynthia Sass, I just wanted to let you know that at the end of the webinar, we are going to give you guys some insights into some of the latest promos that we have on Prolon Life. So make sure to stick to the end, and we'll make sure to get you all of the good money saving options for all of our incredible science. So yay, welcome, Cynthia. It's wonderful to have you here. Cynthia is a registered dietitian as well, so you get two beautiful dietitians here to talk about longevity nutrition. She's a renowned expert in nutrition science. She specializes in longevity and sustainable health and eating strategies. She has over 2 decades of experience. She's worked with top athletes. She actually just talked about a new team that she's supporting now. She helps individuals seeking optimal wellness and those looking to achieve a balanced lifelong health. And she's also the author of several best-selling books on nutrition and wellness. And we are lucky enough to call her one of our longevity dietitians here at El Nutra. So Cynthia, welcome. Could you share a little bit about your journey, what led you to specialize in nutrition? And also would love to hear some of your key beliefs that kind of guide your work with your clients in the realm of longevity nutrition.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you, Melanie, for having me here. I'm really
Yeah.
excited to be here. And I have been a Prolon coach for 4 years now. So I've been leading groups of people doing the Prolon fast. It's been really fun experience because the first time I did Prolon, there weren't groups like that. We didn't have coach-led groups. So it's really fun and rewarding to be a part of that process for people, especially first timers. But my own personal journey, I don't get to talk about this a lot, but like many people, I was influenced by my mom, my dad, and a teacher in 3 different ways. So when I was in high school, my dad's brother died from cancer, and he was very close to him. And my dad's mother and father had both had cancer. So my father became really interested in learning everything he could about preventing cancer.
Mhm.
This was pre-internet. So he would go to the library and I would go to the library with him and tag along, and he would look up everything. And he started subscribing to certain newsletters that he would get in the mail. And he started changing the way he ate. My dad was a very plain meat and potatoes, very picky eater. And I saw him starting to eat broccoli and things. And I was just fascinated by this idea that you could maybe prevent a disease that runs in your family through changing your diet. As a teenager, I was
Right.
fascinated by that. And then my mom, we always had a garden. I just loved going out and like pulling the carrot out of the ground. She always took me to the local farmers market. So I always had like just this love of especially produce and in learning how food is grown. And then I loved health class. When I was in high school, health was my favorite class. And I knew I wanted to do something in health. And I loved my health teacher. And she said, well, why don't you sit down with this book? And it was an A through Z book of health professions. And when I got to D, dietitian, I was like, that's it. I know what I'm going to do with my life now because
That's amazing.
it combined, the food and also the science part and the, being able to maybe help my own family with disease prevention and optimization and longevity. But also I knew it would be a rewarding career to be able to help other people, live longer, healthier lives. So I feel so lucky that I found that at such a young age and went to college knowing that that's what I wanted to study. And I feel super lucky because I can't imagine doing anything else for a living. I really, really love
Amazing.
nutrition. But I think my
Amazing.
own personal principles is I think I can say very confidently, I think nutrition is the foundation of longevity. It touches every other aspect of wellness and of life. It affects mental and physical performance. It affects sleep. It affects mood. It affects immune function, gut health. So I always come back to nutrition, even though I went and got a master's in public health. After I did my master's in nutrition science, I wanted to be able to just expand a little bit out of nutrition. So that degree is not in nutrition, but I always come back to nutrition.
Hmm. I mean, nutrition our food is our most potent daily medicine, right? I
Mhm.
mean, it's something that we do each and every day. We all have access to it, and we're basically, putting our making a vote for our health, every single day, which is incredible. I love that story. It sounds very similar to mine, actually. I've always been really fascinated. I'm always looking up what do blueberries do to my body? How do I do it? It's always super fascinating. But this is amazing, and we've been able to harness your incredible background for the past 4 years, and you work on the front lines with all of our proloners here every month, and it's incredible. So you're making a huge difference each and every day. So we're really happy to have you. Also, to this month, the reason that we wanted to have you on specifically now is because March is National Nutrition Month. Hooray. Every day is Nutrition Day here at El Nutra, but we wanted to celebrate and to really open up the conversation because, again, at El Nutra, we do a lot with fasting nutrition, the concepts of fasting, but we also are, what we do each and every day in between fasting cycles has just as much, if not more, power on our longevity, our potential healthy aging. So given that we are, let's just dive right in. Given that we're celebrating National Nutrition Month, can you explain how the concept of longevity nutrition differs from general nutrition advice and why it's more important for long-term health?
Yeah, I think a lot of general nutrition advice is primarily focused on meeting macro and micronutrient needs. And I would say longevity nutrition is specifically focused on the understanding of nutrition as it relates to health span, that extending the years of life, but doing so with vitality, with independence, free from chronic disease. That phrase, adding not just more years to your life, but more life to your years, right? And this is
Mm-hmm.
largely focused on the understanding of longevity sites around the world where people tend to live to be 100 without these chronic diseases. And also Dr. Walter Longo's 25 years of research studying nutrition for longevity. So it's been for me personally just really exciting to be involved, to be a part of El Nutra and Prolon because I feel like I get this insider, information and
Yeah,
research
the
at my
scoop.
fingertips all
Mhm.
the time. I have the inside scoop all the time. Yeah, and it relates to, the work that I do when I'm not with El Nutra, and it's fascinating because we're learning so much about how we can use nutrition in this very powerful way.
Mm-hmm. And it's not you said something really powerful. I mean, a lot of people are using I like when I talk to my own patients, when I work with people in the world, I often like to ask them, well, what are your actual goals? And a lot of times you'd be surprised. I mean, a lot of people say, I want to lose weight or I want to do this, but if you think broader, sure, weight loss is one component, but it's not getting into cellular repair, cellular rejuvenation, anti-inflammatory benefits, all the things that are very specific to specific types of foods and macronutrient categories. That's different than just weight loss. You can
Yeah.
lose weight by avoiding carbohydrates. You can lose weight by avoiding protein. You can lose
Hmm.
weight by avoiding, walking more, but it's not necessarily the same as eating more antioxidants, helping improve cellular rejuvenation
Hmm.
through different, elements. There's a lot more that goes into it. So I'm happy that you said that, and I would love to just encourage everybody on this call to really think about what is your actual outcome, what is the outcome that you're looking for, because that will give you a very different answer. But
Hmm.
today we want to talk about longevity and how
Yeah.
nutrition impacts it. So
We
um,
always ask the participants in the fasting groups, what is your why? And what I
yes.
love is that so many people's whys relate to health span. So many people say, I want to live a longer, healthier life. I don't want to just live
Yeah.
to be an older age. I want to have that independence. I want to be able to do things. I want to be able to, and personally, that is it for me. I know I've had people in my family who at older years were in nursing homes or they were in wheelchairs or they were not independent. And I want to have that independence. And I remember several years
Hmm.
ago, I had the great fortune to go to Japan for actually a nutrition conference. And I remember just seeing people, in older age, just being so like active out, on bicycles and walking their dogs. And I was just like, well, I want that. I want that. So, that for me is
Yes.
like, I think about I'm very visual. So I think about myself in the future. I think about myself when I'm 90 or 100 years old and being able to still have a garden and still, ride a bicycle and do these things. And to me, that's my number one motivation. And I think more and more people are moving away from just that number on a scale or what size clothes they're in and more towards these real quality of life benefits that are tied to nutrition that, as you said, are much a different focus, than
Hmm.
just weight loss.
Hmm. Yeah, 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 100%. And we can dive more into that. I'm sure we'll get questions coming in, but um, so many curious before. I mean, obviously, when we're here at El Nutra, we talk a lot about this concept of longevity lifestyle. Like there are things that you can do on a yearly basis, like the Prolon 5 day, where you do cycles of the Prolon 5 day, and then there's things that you do on a monthly basis that might be um, smaller, like the 1 day reset or intermittent fasting things. And then there's food that you eat every day. And a lot of people, so just understanding that there's a scope to our longevity lifestyle that is going to probably guide our conversation today. A lot of people are curious about how to maintain the benefits of fasting when they're not actually following the Prolon 5 day. Can you walk us through some of the strategies for eating outside of that fasting period to support continued longevity?
Yes. So if longevity is your focus, there are some basic tenets here. One would be a primarily whole food plant-based diet. And in the plant-based space, lots of different colors, eating the rainbow, lots of different plant families, whole grains, pulses, nuts, seeds, herbs, and spices. And then also a few servings a week of high omega, low mercury fish. And the macronutrient composition we're looking at here is 55 to 65% carbohydrate, complex carbohydrates, high fiber carbohydrates, with 30 to 35% fats, primarily the extra virgin olive oil, the avocado, the nuts, and then 10 to 11% protein, with more protein after the age of 65 to support the maintenance of lean body mass. And then foods consumed within a 12-hour window, but with prioritizing breakfast. So a circadian eating pattern where we're eating with our body's natural clock. Of course, this is for people that have a typical, daily, like they work during the day. I mean, it's a little trickier for people that have night shifts and things like that. But if you have a typical work schedule, eating your breakfast shortly after waking up, eating with the sun coming up, and then cutting off food when the sun starts to go down, and having about a 3 to 4 hour fasting window before bedtime. Okay. And then it also is limiting alcohol, highly processed foods in general, and then added sugars. So all those things together kind of make up longevity nutrition on a daily basis when you're in between or after Prolon.
Hmm. Yeah, and this is so I love the concept and the idea of being plant forward. So
Mm-hmm.
one thing that we question we get all the time here at El Nutra is well, I do enjoy eating some meat sometimes, and we're not saying that can't fit in to a longevity lifestyle. It certainly can, but it shouldn't be the focal point of your meal, right? So, when you're looking at a plate, I mean, Cynthia gave an incredible um, percentages and a full composition of what to look for. But when you're looking at your plate too, I mean, if half of your plate is from plant-based sources, you're off to an incredible start. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean that you have to only eat fish either. It means that fish has incredible omega 3s that can help with inflammatory properties, and also supplying some wonderful fat soluble vitamins like vitamin E and vitamin A that can have antioxidant properties in the body too, to fight off disease and improve immune system, immune support. So it's really about, being more plant forward, and then supplementing your diet, ideally with really incredible low mercury fish, like Cynthia said, but also some animal proteins, if that is something that you choose to do every now and again. And I usually say a couple times a month is what I would suggest. But this is incredible, amazing.
I love that it's very inclusive because when I say, primarily plant-based, again, it doesn't have to be, it's not all or nothing. And it's not about, being strict. It's really about, as you said, prioritizing plants on the plate and
Mhm.
making that your focus. And when you're planning your meals or thinking about what to order from a menu, thinking about plants first, because, when you ask people what's for dinner, they'll often say chicken, salmon. They think of the
Right,
protein first,
right.
right? But if we
Yeah,
can start thinking of the plants first, that would be awesome. And
lentils.
I'm just a huge fan of pulses. Pulses, that umbrella term for all the beans, lentils, peas, chickpeas. I've been a huge pulse promoter for a very long time, well over 10 years, because they do have, they're a unique food group. They do have, they're the highest fiber food group in terms of like what the serving that you would actually eat. So if you're looking at a serving of, say, quinoa or nuts or fruits or vegetables, you're going to get more fiber in a typical serving of pulses than you would in any of those other foods. They have a lot of minerals that many of us fall short on, like potassium and magnesium. They have antioxidants. They help with gut health. So, I'm glad to see more and more people experiment. You're seeing more on menus, like chefs are embracing lentils and beans and chickpeas and things like that. And there are more products out there. So I think those are awesome. And again, even if you do eat animal protein, maybe some of your meals in that meal, you're just thinking about, oh, I could actually replace the chicken with lentils in that meal or whatever. But plant forward, I love that terminology.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure I already feel people asking about, well, what if my gut doesn't tolerate, more plants? But when we'll see if we'll get back to that question too, because I'm sure we both have some tips and tricks for how to support your body, because usually if you do have any adverse side effects from having more fiber from plants in your diet, it really does there's a strategy for introducing it slowly, making sure you
Mhm.
soak your nuts and seeds well to remove those phytates and things like that that can cause some gas and bloating. Anyway, we can come back to that if people have questions, but
Okay.
that's usually I'm like, ooh, somebody's gonna have a
Yes.
um amazing. Yes. Okay. And also the other thing I was just gonna mention is there are a lot of similarities to the Mediterranean diet. The longevity diet that Walter Longo has put forward. Do you want to talk a little bit about, I mean, I'm happy to talk to it too, but about the differences between the two?
Yeah, so I think that the number one, there are specific foods that are emphasized, right? But all in the longevity diet, but also the protein content is a little lower in the longevity diet, and that's based on Dr. Longo's research about overconsumption of protein. So we're talking about more than your body would need, more than your body could really utilize for the maintenance, healing, repair of protein tissues in the body. Um, being a stimulator of the IGF-1 pathway, and overstimulation of that pathway has been associated with aging and with increased chronic disease risk, including cancer. So part of the philosophy is to have an adequate amount of protein without having an excessive amount of protein. And so I don't know if you want to add to that, but
Yeah,
that distinction isn't really made in
that's
the Mediterranean diet.
that's a huge one. And it's again, low protein doesn't mean no protein. We're not
Right.
talking about no protein. Protein is the most versatile nutrient that we need in our body, and almost every single process, including our DNA and RNA, require protein. Everything requires protein. But yes, the between the ages of 18 and 65, when our bodies otherwise are done growing, you need growth factors. Essentially, these IGF-1, mTOR, PKA, these pathways that we track are their growth pathways, right? They promote growth. They promote our bodies to grow, our brains to grow, our cells to create these neural pathways, all of these things. But when our bodies are done growing between the ages of 18 and 65, we want that protein, that growth factor to be lower. And that is a critical component. And we can certainly chat about that a little later. But the other difference between the med diet and the longevity diet is the dairy. Like there's not a lot of dairy. versus, the Mediterranean diet does allow a little bit more of that. So, yeah, but there's a lot of similarities between the two. And, I think that the fasting component that we're going to go into in a big way today is probably one of the biggest differences too.
And I think too, when we talk about the Mediterranean diet, we're really talking about the traditional Mediterranean diet. I think there's an Americanized version of it that has more processed components compared to the traditional true Mediterranean diet. So just keeping that in mind as well,
Yeah.
that the longevity diet is more focused on whole foods.
Yep. Agreed. So let's actually talk about really quickly before we dive back into food, just take a slight detour into our other L-Nutra's other non 5-day products. Like we have our flagship Prolon 5-day program that we suggest that you do 3 times a year to maintain longevity benefits. That's the real autophagy cellular rejuvenation benefits that we talk about ad nauseum. But we know we have several other non 5-day products. So including the L protein, which is a longevity food, our L spread, which is a longevity food, and then other intermittent fasting products like the 1-day reset, fasting bar, fasting shake. So can you speak to how these products can be integrated into a daily nutrition plan, and specifically what roles they all play in supporting metabolic health and longevity?
Absolutely. So the L protein, I cannot tell you how excited I was to learn about this product offering. So as you said, this is a non-fasting product. This is a longevity product. So you would use this when, during your eating window. It provides 25 grams of plant protein per serving, and yet it is specifically formulated not to overstimulate that IGF-1 pathway, that growth pathway that you said. So it is made from pea protein, chickpea, and black bean protein. So you get per serving 25 grams of protein. So this is something that you could use, anytime you need a higher protein, let's say after a workout. It would be like, I work with a lot of athletes. I work with professional athletes, and I work with just active people. And so obviously, if you're putting more wear and tear and stress on your body, depending on what type of training, the type and length of training that you do, your protein needs. So when we talked about protein earlier, we were talking about excessive amounts of protein. We don't want to have excessive amounts of protein, but we do want to meet protein needs. Like you said, protein is so important, right? It is important for repair, healing, and recovery from exercise. So that could be a great way to use the L protein powder. So I love that product. I love chocolate. I am a huge chocolate, especially dark chocolate. And I also love almonds. So the L spread, also not a fasting product, a longevity product. This is a low sugar. It doesn't have non-sugar sweeteners. It actually has sugar, but it's very low. So for a 2 tablespoon portion, which is a pretty generous portion, it's only 3 grams of added sugar. So less than a teaspoon worth of added sugar. So I like that it's very chocolatey. It's really thick and rich. It's made from almonds that come from a region of Italy where there's a lot of people that live these long, healthy lives. It's delicious. There's like several ways that I like to use it, but number 1, right off the spoon, because it's delicious.
Obviously.
Okay.
Obviously.
Number 2, in a smoothie. Number 3, swirled into steel cut oats. Love that. Also as a dip for fresh fruit. And then one of my favorites, I love the salty sweet combination. So I'll take like some organic celery and do kind of like the ants on a log, but like a longevity version of it, where I've got the L spread, and then I'll put dried tart cherries on top. And so you get that crunch and the salt from the celery, and then you get the sweetness from the fruit and from the L spread.
And all the phytonutrients from the cherries.
Yeah. And the dark chocolate.
The sleep benefits.
Yeah. So I've been telling people on the blog, on the Prolon Life website, there's now this great blog, and there's a recipe section, and there's like 4 recipes that use the L spread. And I believe there's crepes, there's like a chocolate covered banana puff. There's some awesome recipes on there that use the L spread. Yeah. Great. So then a few of the other products that are actually fasting products that you would use when you're not doing the 5-day FMD. One that's really exciting is the reset, the 1-day reset. So that is like a 1-day fasting kit. And so I always tell people there's kind of like 3 general ways that you would use this. One is if someone isn't sure about 5 days of Prolon, they maybe haven't committed to 5 days of Prolon yet, and they want to try out the 1-day reset kit just to become familiar with some of the products, because it contains the soups and, a lot of the same things that you'll see in the 5-day kit. So if you've already done Prolon and you're familiar with it, that one doesn't apply to you. But the other two ways to use it, one could be just to kind of have on hand as a backup. So if your eating has become, a little chaotic, or, you've been traveling, or there's been some special occasions or whatever, and you've kind of just gotten a little bit off track with your, eating routine, and you want to just do a 1-day reset. Maybe it's not time yet to do another 5 days of Prolon. And you just need that 1 day to kind of get you back on track. You can use it there. And then the other way you can use it as part of a formal intermittent fasting protocol. So some people will do it once a week, maybe every Wednesday is their fasting day, or maybe they do it 2 times a week, every Tuesday and Thursday. So maybe a 5-2 intermittent fasting protocol. So the reset kit uses the same sort of science as Prolon, in that, let's say Monday night, you're done eating, you start your fast, you have your overnight sleep, you wake up on Tuesday and you eat the food that's in the reset kit. You're going to stay in a fasting state in the same way that Prolon would allow. And so you can get up to about 36 hours, I think we say, right, Melanie, of fasting from
Yes.
that previous overnight start to that sleep, to that following next day, not breaking the fast, to sleep that night, to the following morning. So
Exactly.
you're not going to get the autophagy benefits that you would get from the 5-day Prolon FMD, but you are going to get this nice kind of like not prolonged, but like prolonged in relation to an intermittent fast that might just be 16-8, where you've broken the fast after 16 hours. So you get up to 36 hours potentially of fasting, but not into that autophagy type of benefit.
I also love, that's incredible to note too, because we do a lot of education here about what the difference between an intermittent fast versus a prolonged fast is. Technically, yes, 1-day reset is longer than what an intermittent or a time restricted feeding pattern that you do on a daily basis. But it is still technically an intermittent fast.
Yeah.
But I also like to call out that the 1-day resets also, I don't know if you guys want to drop in the chat too, if anyone hasn't done Prolon 5-day, I'd be very curious to know. But for those people who are maybe nervous about starting the 5-day, or if you want to see how the foods respond to your system and you don't want to overload by just jumping off the deep end right away, the 1-day resets is a wonderful dip your toe in the water too, that, for some people that are feeling maybe a little bit intimidated by a prolonged fast, the 1-day reset is definitely a commitment. It can be a commitment, but it's not as big of a commitment as so I like to kind of ease people in that way as well.
Yeah. So prolonged fasting, we're talking 48 hours or more unbroken fast.
Right.
Really our definition compared to intermittent fasting. So even though you get up to 36 hours, like you said, it's still considered an intermittent fast, but longer intermittent fast than your typical, within a 24-hour window, breaking that fast.
Right.
Yeah. So it's a really cool product. And I just I always have one on hand just in case. It's like, okay, you know what? I've been traveling a lot. There's been, a little,
And traveling always messes up our system. It's nice to get it back in. But in the chat, we've seen a couple people are new, maybe haven't done this 5-day yet. So yeah, the 1-day reset's a wonderful, something you can do weekly. You can do it, a couple times a week if you want. But we do suggest, I also love having like 1 day a week where you're dedicating, Mondays are your 1-day reset days is great. Well, these are all wonderful. I'm sure that we'll also get back to, did you talk about the fasting shake too?
Oh, no.
Bars,
So,
fasting
okay.
shakes?
Yeah. Bars and shakes.
Those are magical. So there are things that you can do from a time restrict. Well, first of all, explain what time restricted eating is for people that may not be familiar with that. And also how the fasting bars, fasting shakes can come into play.
Get into that. Okay. So time restrict, or I'm sorry. Time restricted eating form of intermittent fasting generally involves within a 24-hour window. So let's say 7 a.m. today to 7 a.m. tomorrow. That's your 24-hour window. Typically, it's devoting a certain number of hours consciously to having a fasting period and a feeding period. So that split within the 24 hours could be 12-12, it could be 10-14, it could be 16-8. So let's say someone's doing 16-8, and let's say that they're going to be eating from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. So that's their 8-hour eating window. And then they're going to be fasting from 5 p.m. until 9 a.m. the following morning. So that's how they've split that time. So within the fasting window, eating one fasting bar or drinking one fasting shake can allow you to get some nourishment, feel full, but not alter ketone levels and blood glucose levels, so that you are essentially metabolically not breaking the fast. Is that a good way of explaining it, Melanie?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Otherwise
in other
known
words,
as our magic wand. We've done. I mean, I think that these are two products within our longevity line that are not that people sleep on them. People don't necessarily sleep on them, but they're not getting as much of this is incredible nutrition technology that we've tapped into. And people have actually tested that their glucose and ketone levels are exactly the same after they've had a fasting bar or a fasting shake as they were after drinking a glass of water.
yeah. So let's say, like, I like to give really, really real world examples here. So let's say that you wake up, you're going to start eating at 9, but you've woken up at 6 a.m. And you're kind of like, oh, I don't know if I can wait till 9
Right.
to eat. So you have one fasting bar. As long as you don't consume more than 140 milligrams of caffeine, which we haven't gotten to talk about caffeine yet, but that's important. Um, and you don't consume any other calories with it. So you're having it maybe with 1 cup of black coffee or some, green tea or black tea or with water. You can eat that, say at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. to tie you over to get you through to that 9 o'clock where you actually eat a real breakfast and have the beginning of your eating window. And then some other people might use it in the evening. So let's say they cut off their food by 5 o'clock, but they don't go to bed till 11 and they're a little hungry at 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. They could have a fasting bar or fasting shake then to kind of keep them full. And then still, again, from a ketone and glucose perspective, not shift out of this fasting state.
So you're still getting those weight loss benefits and things like that honestly intermittent fasting, those shorter fasts are incredible for, right? They can really help you reach those goals that you're interested in reaching, and these two products are again incredible for helping you to achieve that. And or the other option is to eat it, you finish your dinner early and you're following the circadian patterns of the sun. You stopped eating at 5 or 6 and you don't go to bed till 11, you're kind of hungry in between, you can have one of those as an after dinner snack too. So awesome, we love those. If you guys have questions, ask us about it. Before we pause to kind of go to the Q&A, because I'm seeing some incredible questions over here in the Q&A chat box. I just wanted to take one more second with you and based on your 4 years of experience here at Prolon, what would you say is your best and most recommended approach to days 6 and 7 for the people who are looking for the immediate refeeding after a Prolon 5-day? Would you suggest the L protein? Would you suggest the shake? What's your pro tip for days 6 and 7?
So funny that you asked that, because I'm leading a group this week, and just in today's live Zoom, we talked about transition day 6. So we just went
Great.
all over
Perfect.
And so there is an official transition day guideline. And so people certainly can use the L protein to break the fast to get that 25 grams of plant protein without overstimulating that pathway. So I like to talk about, and I think I actually learned this from Renee, one of our other RDs. So about kind of this analogy of thinking about going into a fasting state as being in a dark, quiet room, right? So you're in this dark, quiet room, during the FMD, and imagine you're in this dark, quiet room, you're kind of settled into it, and then suddenly like a door opens and like this bright light is blaring in and this, really loud sound is coming in. It's like, whoa, it would be like a shock. It'd be like overwhelming, right? So the goal of the transition day is to not shock the system. It's to ease yourself out of this fasting state in a really strategic way. And so we want to do that with primarily whole plant-based foods. And so, with the L protein, again, you're not going to be going from having the IGF-1 downregulated to it suddenly being spiked, because that's specifically formulated in that way. But after all the months of leading fasting groups, I would say that many people love, there is in the transition day guide, there is a shopping list. And so people can kind of use that to mix and match. And there are some suggested recipes in there too. So the avocado toast, it's a really popular one. People love to transition out of the fast with avocado toast. So it'd be whole grain bread with some delicious avocado, a little drizzle of extra virgin olive oil, maybe a little sea salt, put some veggies on there, maybe some microgreens or some sliced tomato or whatever's in season. And then another popular one would be steel cut oats with a little cinnamon and some low sugar fruit, maybe berries, or cut apple, like a chopped green apple, and then maybe some nuts. That's another popular way to transition out of the fast. So people get really creative once they have this list. I mean, it's basically lots of colorful veggies, low sugar fruit, so primarily berries, apples, and grapefruit. And then again, lots of other whole plant-based foods that are outside of the fruit and vegetable group, whole grains, legumes, nuts and seeds, herbs and spices. And then maybe later in the day, if you do eat animal protein, a low mercury fish for dinner might be a good way to get in some animal protein. But after you've already kind of eased your body a little bit more into this fed state.
Yep. Yeah, the one thing, these are incredible suggestions, and we do the transition day guide again is so helpful in kind of guiding some suggestions. But just be careful not to go too quickly, right? Like on
Yeah.
6 and 7, you are very, very low calorie for 5 days. Having a massive meal or something that's really, like I talk about, like the greasy diner breakfast or something like that is probably going to give you some gastric upset. You're
Yeah.
not going to feel great. Usually it's on days 6 and 7, we just go take it a little bit slower, chew really well, breathe, put your fork down, breathe in between meals. Try not to drink water when you're eating too. I also suggest, that's an Ayurvedic practice too, like filling your body up and then also eating can mess up your signals and cues inside your stomach. So just taking some time. But these are great suggestions. And actually, I would say this leads us really well. Do you have anything else to mention about that before I kind of dive
It's funny
Q&A?
because I just talked about a lot of those with the group today about listening to your body is the number one principle there is don't push yourself too far. Don't eat more than what feels comfortable. Take your time. I did also even say, like, try not to multitask, do other things while you're eating so you can really tune into your
Yep.
body's cues, chew your food, maybe even do a little breathing or mindfulness before you eat, put your fork or utensil down in between bites, take your time. There's no specific on day 6, there's no specific calorie recommendation. There's no specific, eating window. It's just listening to your body. And
Yep.
your experience, I mean, my experience of doing Prolon multiple times, it's been a little bit different every round of how I feel on day 6. Some days I feel like I can go, have more normal sized portions. And other days I've had where, like, I remember one day I always talk about this, and it was a summertime and I just was really missing salads. And I had prepared, I bought everything to have a big salad for lunch on day 6. And I just couldn't, I just knew, my body just knew. I'm looking at the, like, I cannot eat a big salad today. So I
Yeah.
just ended up, so some people do better with cooked vegetables versus raw, or maybe having like hummus with a little bit of roasted vegetables and, have maybe more snacking or grazing instead of actually
Mhm.
eating meals. Just let your body guide you.
Yeah. And every fast is different.
Yeah.
Every prolonged 5-day fast is different. But I think that you brought up a really good point that we've done. By the way, you guys, we have over 47 clinical trials that we've run within our company and our programs, and several surveys that we've run, tests that we've run, shown that people are more mindful. They finish the program and they are more mindful of. They want to be. They're motivated to be more mindful of what they're doing. There's an element of improving your relationship to food that this, not just the prolonged 5-day, but the longevity lifestyle helps to support, which obviously plays into so many other aspects of our life. So I really love to call that out too. But let's dive in. We're already, it's 4:40, time flies when we're on in these webinars. So let's dive into some Q&A if you don't mind, because there's some really wonderful questions in here that I want that are relevant and kind of help us transition from this conversation. So in no particular order, mostly to kind of keep with the trends here. somebody asked about protein and muscle mass, which I think is an incredible question. I'm happy to, tag team with you on answering this one. But, we talk about being low protein, and yet we also talk about muscle being incredibly important for healthy aging. What would you say to somebody about that? And what kinds of suggestions would you give them?
So I would say there's no one size fits all, right? I mean, if somebody is more sedentary, they're going to need less protein than someone who's more active, and someone who's more active, it depends on what type of activity you do and what your goals are. So obviously you can personalize your protein needs with your own personal healthcare provider, and tailor that to you, because we don't just want to say across the board nobody should have more than X% of calories from protein or X amount. So, yeah, I mean, we want to, again, meet protein needs. We just don't want to exceed. And I think right now, everybody, like when I first became a dietitian, people were more fat focused. And now people, like in terms of limiting, and
Yeah.
now people are more carb focused on limiting. And therefore, it's pushing protein, right? And so more people are more like, I think a lot of people are over consuming protein above and beyond what their bodies really need. So yes, protein is really important, but we want to strike that sweet spot. We want to hit that healthy balance of meeting the needs, but not really exceeding that.
Right.
So, yeah. What are
And
your
the
thoughts?
other, yeah, totally. And the other thing that I would add to that is there are so low protein doesn't mean no protein, first of all. And there's also strategies for um, optimizing protein synthesis as well. So if you are going to the gym and wanting to build protein and muscle, it's important to recognize that your body is more apt to absorb the most amount of protein within the hour or two just after working out. And obviously you work with athletes too, Cynthia. So, add to this, correct me. But your body is going to absorb a lot more just after a workout. So ensuring that you have about 30 grams of protein within those first 2 hours post workout is going to be really, really supportive. Also making sure you have a little bit of carbohydrates in those meals, because carbohydrate helps to actually pull protein into your muscle cells. So obviously yes, to what Cynthia said, you need to, if you are a marathon runner, if you're at the gym hitting weights, your protein needs are going to be a little bit higher. Of course, you want to rebuild that muscle that you're working so hard to build, but then you also can nourish it properly by using those hours right afterwards to really pull your highest protein meals right after your workout too. Anything else to add from the athlete trainer over here?
No, I think, yeah, that when you are in the post-workout period, that recovery period, your body is more primed to utilize the protein you eat for that repair and healing. And so it does make sense to make sure that in a post-workout meal, you do prioritize protein, but like you said, not exclusively. You do want to have it within a balance, along with carbohydrates and some healthy fats, and also good, nice produce and things like that. Like a recovery meal is not just protein.
Yeah, exactly. Sticking on this protein for a second, I have two more follow-up questions that are here in the Q&A chat. One person asked, let me see, there was a question about somebody that is vegan, vegetarian, should they supplement with omega-3s if they're not going to be consuming fish?
I mean, in my personal opinion, I mean, I think that, that I wouldn't say there's no one size fits all answer to that. For me, there is a way to measure your omega index, and, to assess that. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Melanie, when you work with individuals.
I would say so. Omega-3 is hugely important, obviously, but just like calcium, milk isn't the only place you can get it. So fish isn't the only place to get omega-3s in your diet as a vegan vegetarian. In fact, nuts, seeds, all of these incredible legumes are really high in omega-3s. Also, like hemp seeds, for instance, are one of the highest form of omega-3s that you can consume as a vegan vegetarian. So and the reason that we call out omega-3s specifically in the longevity diets is because so much of our Western diet and culture is riddled in seed oils that are very high in omega-6. Omega-6, not to take us down a rabbit hole, but we want we need omega-6 also, but the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 in our current Western diet is swapped. We're consuming a lot more omega-6 and not a lot of omega-3, and that is a prime situation for inflammation to form. So if we flip-flop that, if we're consuming more omega-3s and less omega-6, that's what we have seen consistently to reduce and eliminate sometimes the inflammation that we're experiencing from a Western diet. So if you are vegan, vegetarian, just know that fish isn't the only place to get that. You can certainly supplement if that works for your system. You can also include more nuts and seeds and other high omega-3 products too. There are foods
Yeah.
as well.
And there's a lot of info out there about like the form of omega-3s that are in, say, chia seeds and some of these other plant foods. It's different from the form that's in fish, but there is algae. Algae is where fish get their DHA and EPA.
Oh yeah.
So
Shoot.
yeah. So there's different ways to kind of address that particular issue.
Yeah. Yeah. So that other question I was going to say about protein, we have a lot of people over 65 that are just curious. Okay, what happens? We talk about this, low protein between 18 and 65. And then, we talk about, well, what does happen over 65 and why is more protein, better after that age? And it's around what is somebody over 65 trying to reach?
So I
The protein.
mean, yeah, so I've seen minimum one, maybe 1.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. And just because we're more prone to losing lean body mass, and it's so important just for not only quality of life, just to be able to do things, to carry things, to lift things, but also to be um sort of um strong enough to stay balanced, to reduce things like risks of falls or imbalances that could lead to injuries, and injuries that could have like a domino effect on health. So just to be able to have enough protein to maintain that lean body mass does seem to we see a shift over the age of 65 in how much protein is required to meet that need.
And the L protein is wonderful for that. It's super, super helpful to help supplement your body with the types of protein that you need over 65. So it's an incredible product for that. And also, yeah, that's a great answer. Yes, you do need more protein over 65, and making sure, and also, there's other times in your life too. If you're sick, if you're recovering from illness, if you're breastfeeding, if you're a pregnant woman, these are all situations that you might need more protein. But over 65, it's generally higher. So staying on that for one quick second, what would you say to somebody who is over 65, maybe over 70, is following a fasting mimicking diet or other intermittent fasting methods optimal?
So I guess when I say the regular version of Prolon, the commercially available version of Prolon, those studies did not include people over the age of 70. So because over the age of 70, we are more prone to muscle loss, as we just said, it's important that if you are over 70 and you want to do Prolon, the 5-day FMD, you do talk to your doctor or healthcare provider, make sure you're a good candidate, and make sure that if they feel that you are, that they're overseeing and supervising and kind of collaborating with you on that. But then we haven't even gotten to the other arm of L-Nutra, which is L-Nutra Health. And L-Nutra Health has two programs, a diabetes reversal program and also a metabolic health program. And those really provide that one-on-one oversight with healthcare providers to give you that personalized attention. And the cutoff participation is 90 years old. So if you are over 70 and you do qualify, you kind of are in one of those two categories, then you could work with one of those L-Nutra Health programs, and know that you're going to be getting that personalization.
Yeah, 100%. And also, it's not that there's another question on being on the older end of the scale and wanting to not focus on muscle loss. Can you talk a little bit about the muscle protection component of the Prolon 5-day and why this is probably a better option, I would say, than, following just a water only fast or something like that?
I have to tell you, when I first heard about Prolon, I was, I was already a registered dietitian, but it was like relatively new. I think it had just come out, and I heard about it and I was like, what is this? So, being a person, I have 3 science degrees, a health professional, I wanted to know the science. And one of the first things I came across was a clinical trial where after 3 consecutive cycles or 3 months of Prolon, people were able to lose an average of 5.7 pounds, but most of that was actually visceral fat, that internal belly fat that is a little harder to get to, a little harder to lose, and a more dangerous type of fat to carry, but also at the same time, maintenance of lean body mass. And as soon as I saw this, I'm like, okay, people are doing something for 5 days. They're doing 5 days, 3 months in a row. They're losing like 5.73 pounds. Okay, that's not bad. But also the fact that that's primarily from a location in the body that is really hard to reduce and also really metabolically important to reduce. And they're maintaining lean body mass at the same time. It was like, okay, I want to know more about this. I want to do it myself. And that's how I got, I did it myself. And then after doing that, started recommending it to other people. And so the studies have consistently shown that maintenance of lean body mass while doing this fast, which is counterintuitive to what you might think. And when I talk with other health professionals, I think that's always their number one concern. Are people going to lose lean body mass? Is the weight that they're losing lean body mass? And actually what the research is showing is no.
Right. Right. They've been able to consistently show that muscle is protected. Granted, we have an incredible study that came out last year, maybe 2 years ago now. Time escapes me, but comparing the Mediterranean diet to the Prolon 5-day diet as well. And what they found is that over the course of 4 months, so following 4 cycles of the FMD over 4 consecutive months, separated out, obviously, versus 120 days, so 4 months of strict adherence to the Mediterranean diet, the effects were equivalent on weight loss, cardiometabolic factors, but the one area that FMD was superior was in muscle protection.
Mm-hmm.
So metabolically speaking, that's huge, right? I mean, we talked a lot about muscle earlier about, 100% we're maintaining muscle, making sure you have a really wonderful muscle mass in your body is huge for longevity. And doing other caloric restriction weight loss programs doesn't necessarily guarantee that your muscle is going to be preserved that way. So it's
to be able to see this in the research it over repeatedly is incredible. And this is why often in the groups we talk about the weight loss being like the cherry on top of the longevity sundae, right? Yes, you may, but a lot of people actually do Prolon not for weight loss, but for these metabolic benefits and for, the 5-day for the autophagy and, for this purposes, like you said, of kind of resetting where, this awesome survey about, you said people are more motivated to eat healthier or more motivated to live a healthier lifestyle overall and actually experience less sugar cravings and, feel more in control of what they eat. So there's all these other benefits that have nothing to do with weight loss, but being able to tap into visceral fat is also really important while maintaining lean body mass.
Right. Agreed. So going back to one of the questions I want to make, we have, I don't know how time flies when we're on these, we could do this for another hour. I just want to go back really quickly because we took a little detour to talk about 5-day, but this is definitely longevity nutrition conversation. We want to come back here for a second. Intermittent fasting, we've talked a lot about time restricted feeding and intermittent fasting. And I just want to kind of use these last couple of minutes to talk about, for someone who maybe is just starting on the intermittent fasting train, if they're testing this out, how could they build the discipline or what kinds of suggestions would you give them on an everyday basis to, we talked about the fasting bars and fasting shakes, but are there any other nutrition specific tips, food focused tips that you'd give them for intermittent fasting routines?
Well, because we are big fans of eating breakfast and Dr. Longo really emphasizes the importance of eating breakfast, I do think that's important. And, what I find with my one-on-one clients is that people who are reluctant to eat breakfast because they're afraid that they're going to be hungrier all day or they're just going to eat more overall. And what many people find is that they actually feel more energized and more focused during the day, and then they're less hungry in the evening. So if I think part of it is just kind of figuring out some of your timing. If you're trying to limit the number of hours that you eat, maybe try starting with breakfast and cutting off food earlier in the evening, because most of us are less active in the evening hours than we are in the morning hours, right? So it makes more sense with our body clock and how our bodies are working and what our bodies are needing to do. And I think that if people are, eating enough, I think part of it is like, what are you eating during your eating window? Because if you're just looking at timing only and you're not paying attention to the nutrition and quality and balance of what you're eating during your eating window, you may be too hungry during your fasting window. But when you have your eating window dialed in, your fasting window actually becomes easier, in my opinion. So, does that?
Yeah, no, yeah, yes, 100%. Also, just, I like to emphasize the idea that you can't fast your way out of a bad diet. As a dietitian, if Walter Longo was sitting here, he'd actually tell you that, all of the studies that we've done does not look at what you're doing in between cycles, which, suffice it to say, means that the results are there regardless of what you're doing in between time. As a dietitian, I fundamentally believe that, the behavior change that the 5-day promotes, all of, you start to, your mindset starts to change, and you already, after a couple cycles, you're changing the way that you're doing things. But I do like to remind people that you can't fast your way out of a bad diet in between time. So don't use it as an excuse. A lot of people are doing intermittent fasting and having, what you eat, what you choose to eat matters, is my point. Focusing on healthy fats, focusing on, whole, plant-based, plant-forward foods is really important. Like we've talked about, adding more color to your plate, that kind of thing is super important. So I have one more question, and then we're going to wrap things up. Just because I think that this first question that we got is actually really important. Do you have anything to say about caloric restriction? We have a question from Robert that asks, does caloric restriction result in increased longevity? And we've talked about, and I think it kind of goes to the concept of, is perpetually calorically restricting a recipe for longevity, or do you have any thoughts on that and the science behind that?
Mhm. I think it depends on what your definition of that is, and so I know I've heard Dr. Longo talk about balancing fasting with nourishing. And I think it seems like, from what I've heard from him, the idea is not to undernourish chronically,
Right.
right? We need to nourish ourselves. And so when you say like, you can't, you can't use fasting to kind of overcome a poor diet, you also don't want to, we can wake anything that kind of has benefits. Sometimes people are more prone to overdoing, right? And so we want to balance is always the key. We want to maximize the benefits and then also balance it with adequate, optimal nutrition. So I'm not sure if that
Yeah.
answers the question, because it kind of depends on how you define caloric restriction. Are you defining it as a person who's overweight, who, if they continue to eat enough to maintain their current weight and they reduce their intake, that type of caloric restriction? Or are you talking about caloric restriction meaning less than what it would take to support your ideal body weight? Those are two different things.
Yeah, great call out for sure. I would say you are 100% correct, and it kind of goes back to this analogy of, on the Prolon 5-day, you are cleaning and clearing and recycling all of these damaged cell parts, and you're replacing them with newer functioning parts, so your cells actually quite literally are functioning younger than they were when they began the program. But you need energy. Food is energy to rebuild. So we had another question in the chat about, is fasting longer better? No, there's
Right.
diminishing returns after a certain period of time, which is why our program is specifically designed to be 5 days, right?
Yes.
Anything past that, they found diminishing returns. From an autophagy perspective, you don't need to do it for longer than that. So, important to remember that food is fuel. We need fuel. We need we need energy. We need some of that growth factor to help repair and rejuvenate. You can't do it with if you have no resources to do that,
Mhm.
right? So doing that for too long of a period of time has actually been, including, having too little protein, to talk about that, has been associated with shorter longevity also. So there's
Yeah.
always this happy medium, this bell curve that we're trying to strike this optimal balance between everything. But yeah, that's a
Yeah.
really, really good point.
That sweet spot. And I will say this, like every single group I think I've ever led, someone asks if they can extend the 5 day. And
Yeah.
we always say no, because
Because
yeah,
you
there's a,
feel so good. You're like, I'm
yeah.
sure, let's do this again for another 5 days.
Yes.
But yes, the answer is don't.
Yeah.
It's why we suggest the benefits of the Prolon 5 day do compound over time. So that's why we suggest you continue to do it quarterly, or if you're just beginning it, doing those 3 months in a row. But giving yourself a lot of nourishment in between time and focusing on the types of foods you're eating is really important.
Yeah, we are like these magnificent construction sites for, that we need to, we need to fuel, rebuild, repair, heal, and on a daily basis, we need nutrition to do
Yes.
that. So,
Yes, yes. Cynthia, our time, but believe it or not, our time is up.
I
But
know,
do you
did
have
go
any,
by fast.
I know. Do you have any final remarks before I dive into what our current amazing uh, deals are right now that I want to share with everybody? Do you have any
Uh,
thoughts
I
for?
just that I think what's been really exciting for me being a part of, being a coach is because this is something I do myself. This is something that I recommend to other people, and I truly believe in the science behind it. And so it just, it's just something that it just comes so naturally to talk about because it's something that I feel like is an incredible opportunity to optimize. And that's what it's all about because I want that health span.
Yeah.
So thank you for letting me be here to share.
Oh my gosh, you were obviously, we love chatting with you, and thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate you. You join us every month. And by the way, if you are new to fasting, or if you're old to fasting and you want some extra support, Cynthia and our other longevity dietitians host group fast every single week. Cynthia's joining one doing one right now. It is almost done, almost closed up, but go on to our we'll actually add the link to that in our chat for you guys to join a upcoming fasting group. It's really helpful to have that team support. In